Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker on stage. Dhaminda Siriwardena, Tech Forum Lead at Slascom, and Head of Software Engineering at Zone 24/7.
Hi, good evening. So I guess I have the most boring topic to present, but this is an important topic in the whole AI roadmap. So we heard a lot of things from language models to multiple models to all that, and there was so much of data that's been fed into these models, and we get an output which are very much human-like. But there's another side to this story. So that's where I kind of put a twist into your technological mindset. It's nice to kind of develop applications using for AI, using AI tools as well. But then there's a concern as to how these AI tools should be used. Of course, we are trying to use it for our day-to-day life as well as enhancing our development, trying to make sure that the applications are done in a shorter time period. All that kind of comes into play. But then, like I said, there's another side to it. Oh, yep. Yes. So there are certain things like fairness, transparency, respect for user privacy, and aligning technology with the values of the society. The reason being, AI is used by the general public end of the day. You and me will use it for technology stuff, developing applications, cutting code, and all that. But when it goes into the general public, we have to be mindful of what it's going to do and what good and bad it will be on the society. So let's go through a few slides. I put a few slides, not the best slides as well, but let me take you through those. So some of the key responsibilities in responsible AI. It's fairness, transparency, accountability, and sustainability. How many of you use AI tools for your day-to-day development work or your university coursework? Right? Quite a few hands. I guess when it comes to normal working, like forget about the development side, but when it comes to HR, admin, and then probably marketing and sales, they do use chat agents like ChatGPT to Copilot to whatever that's out there, Gemini from Google. They use these to kind of generate content. So this content is trained based on a huge amount of data. There's a concern of where this data comes from, or where do they get this data from? I mean, there was a huge debate on ChatGPT, on OpenAI. They were talking about they were harnessing or extracting data from different places, all those things. So there is a fairness and a transparency that you need to maintain when you develop AI applications. A transparency is, let's say you're developing an application for your clients or your users, clients, users, or whoever. The information that it's going to present to these users, there can be a question as to where you got this data from. How did you extract this data? Did you steal from somebody? Or did you scrape from public websites? Now that's a big question, a big question mark. What happens is, as developers, we are good at coding. We'll come up with the best application that's possible, but we will not be concerned about the data or the source of data. So that's where we are looking at, and this is the focus. So there has to be accountability. So there was this company who wanted their receipts processed and an output given to the accounting department saying, these are the claims that are raised by the company staff of this particular customer. Then somebody came up from the accounts department and said, how good is your agent? How good is your model that kind of interprets all this data? These receipts can come in scanned, pre-printed, handwritten, all kind of things. How do we know that this information, we can rely on this information and give back the claims to the staff? They said the account department can't go through each and every receipt that they raise and compare against the system and see whether it's right or wrong. So there has to be some kind of accountability in this whole process. So when we develop applications, we need to prove that there is certain amount of accuracy that we could guarantee. Anything over and above that, we need to have a method of accountability on this. So that's one side of it. There's data accountability from the source as well as data accountability on the output of it. So these are concerns that one would have to have when you're architecting your application. Same with the transparency as well. And then on the sustainability, there are different ways of defining this. Some say when you run a large language model or a training process, you consume so much of energy. When you try to kind of train a model, it's good to have enough and more data so that the model works efficiently. I mean, you saw in the previous presenters, they were showing how the whole thing works. But sustainability is how much of energy would you kind of spend on getting this output to the end users. I think some of the large companies are investing on nuclear energy as well to run their servers and the backend systems. I mean, it's the amount of energy that you require for it. So you have to be very concerned about that as well. Yep. I think they didn't like it much, I guess, the power systems. So the best practices for implementation. What are the strategies? You should have an auditing mechanism internally, the engagement, and the guidelines and the policies. So I work with Zone 24/7, and we have quite a contingent of developers, software developers. And I was asking some of the guys in our company to use an AI agent for their development work. Some of them said, wow, this is great. This kind of gives us the support to develop things quick. Some of the senior guys came and said, oh, this is useless. I have to spend more time trying to correct the content that was done by the agent than I can do it myself. So different perspective to it. But what happens is when you give us such a tool to your developers, when you deploy the application at your client or user side, there can be a concern generated by the client side to say, did you copy any of this code from another source? The models are trained on different code bases. So there's a very fine line that is there when these tools are used. So in order to cover yourself, you need to have some kind of a guideline and a set of policies. Draw a boundary of how you would use your tools. Shouldn't be open-ended so that you kind of control the use of these tools. Also, an audit has to be there of how these tools are used and within what. I mean, before the chat agent came about, a lot of developers used to go in and copy from Stack Overflow, paste it, run the damn thing. It might work, it might not work. but they somehow they got it working. But nowadays it's much more intelligent because you can ask details, you can prompt it very well, and it can do a fantastic job supporting your development part of it. But then the other side is there of how one would kind of make sure that this particular application that I kind of give it out to a customer doesn't have any code from a different source. Of course, when you use Copilot with your either VS Code or Visual Studio or whatever the IDE that you're going to use, there's a disclaimer that comes with it saying that they will not use your code to train it, nor they will not get other people's code for your this thing. But then there's a fine line. Like my chief CTO says, he's dead against me or any of us using AI tools. He said, you don't know the other side of it. Because he sits at some of the litigation boards with world top companies, which he says, these are not nice situations to have when you're a software developer. But these are challenges that we have because AI is going to stay, it's not going to go away. It's going to get more and more advanced, and we are going to have much more advanced tools. I believe that will kind of come up to help us in the development time frame. And also from a project perspective, what we try to do is develop and deploy the project in the shortest possible time. So when that crunch happens, of course, we kind of tend to use these tools. Right. So some of the real world examples are, now if you look at companies like IBM, Google, they all have responsible AI policies within it. They kind of work within a certain framework. So that's good. That's what we are looking at, and that's as local companies or you as being in the development technical side of it, you should also look into those things. You should kind of try and adhere to those. There are bad lessons learned from these unethical use of language models and the data, especially the data. It's the data that the concern here. So data can be extracted from wrong sources. Data can be extracted from web browsers and stuff like that. So there was an example, I bring it, this client of ours said, look, we want a certain application done. The data, you could go in and scrape it from everywhere you want, anywhere. Said, no, sorry, we can't do that because we are developing it for you. It's against the rules. Said, no, it doesn't matter, I ask you to do it. But we kind of refrain from doing that because that's not the right way of doing it. So we need to go back and educate the client saying, look, it's not the way to do it. If you're doing it, you need to kind of get the consent from the source to say, look, it's okay to kind of extract the data. It may be publicly available, but it's somebody's hard work that was put into it, right? So it's not like you going and extracting. It's the same thing, right? Somebody comes and extract information from you without you knowing it. You can consider as somebody stealing information. So it's the same thing in this context as well. Normally, we don't tend to think like that because we say, look, when you Google it, it comes. When you go to the site, it comes. Why not you take it and build it? But it's against the rules. That's what they say. Right. So try to understand that and try to kind of focus in those areas when you are developing applications. So achieving responsible AI. How do you achieve this? Like I said before, you need to have a framework, a guideline, so that you and your team is able to kind of adhere to that guidelines. Anything, if somebody goes over the guideline, you need to have an auditing policy to say, look, I don't think you should be doing it. Your code reviews might kind of filter that. Your QA department, testing department might filter that. But you need to kind of look into those things. The future is very bright, definitely, with the AI tools coming in and becoming more and more powerful. You could see new models coming in, new powerful models coming in. The technology or the silicons are getting advanced. But what happens is you have to be practicing responsible AI. So responsible AI will be not only the use of data, but when you do large training sessions for these models, be mindful of the power and energy it's going to use. Right. So that's the whole context of it. Any questions? I hope I didn't put everyone to sleep. All right, so I think this is something for you all to digest, because it might be new to some quite conversant with it. But when I heard or when I went through it the first time, I got the same thing saying, oh no, we have to constrain ourselves. The technology is moving at a rate, but the constraints, the controls, the guidance, the governance, all has to come in one place. The reason being, like I said, it goes into the public, the general public. So there was another side to it where...
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
So let's say some companies have gotten into the habit of documenting their processes using AI. So what would you say are the constraints that we need to be aware of when it comes to implementing processes by, strategizing
You're looking at the
based on that?
guidelines, is it, for such...
Yeah, let's say they're setting up their processes mostly based on the feedback or the prompts that they generate through AI. So what are some challenges you see that we need to be aware of when taking that fully into account when setting up those processes?
Yeah, okay, good question. What happens is nothing is defined as such, as this is what you should do. What you need to do is you need to safeguard yourself. Let's take an example where I said about this web scraping thing that the client wanted, right? If the client insists that this is what is required, you probably need to get a consent from the client saying, look, it's this person who's asking for it, and you're not liable for it. You had to cover yourself. Because in the event, when it goes public and somebody uses it and he says, look, this data seems to be very familiar to me. Oh, it comes from my own side. How did they get it? They didn't ask me. I'm going to file a lawsuit against you. So when that happens, what's your fallback plan? That's what you need to get. Because there's no clear definition of what you should do. But definitely you have to safeguard in that case. Hope it's answered. Thanks. Anything? Yep.
Among the developer community, usually developers used to copy or ask questions from other developers and copy their code into their products. Since the beginning of programming and internet, and they used to use that using Stack Flow or other social platforms. And when it comes to AI and developers use AI to coding, where's the point that we can define the ethicality of using others' codes or the AI-generated codes in commercial applications?
Yep. The only issue here is you don't know how this code came to being, right? Because the AI model would kind of throw a result out based on the questions or the data that's given to it. It might not pull a code out of something that it has taken off from a source training model.
Usually,
Sorry.
usually AI tool is trained with publicly available data, maybe in Stack Overflow or GitHub open source projects. So they are not copyright protected, or they are generally open source.
Yeah. That's a different way of looking at it. But some people say, look, now you go into GitHub, extract a code, and you use it. It's you who use that code for your project. It might be code extracted from that, and you put into it, and you might modify the way you want it and get it up and running, and put it for production also. But what happens in this AI agent is, let's say I'm the person who runs the AI agent. Now I need to kind of build this AI agent with a whole humongous amount of data. How do I get it? I look around. Oh, there's something free around it. I go and extract all that from those free sources. Wouldn't that be unethical? Because it's all that's available out there that I'm just pulling out, right? But you as an individual might go in and get a piece of code. So that's the argument here for OpenAI, saying OpenAI went in, because OpenAI was supposed to be a kind of community project, right? They went a different this thing, but they made money out of it. So the agent is making money out of free sources, which is not ethical. That's what they are saying.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we have about a few more minutes if anybody has anything. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you. Lots of large language models use, use publicly available data, but will there be a challenge for AI growth when people are stop contributing? For Stack Overflow, people were doing threads and asking questions, answering them for decades, and AI was trained on them, obviously. And with the AI advancements, people are stopped doing that, and there will be some shortage of training data. So will that be a problem for AI growth?
Yeah, I think the few presenters before me kind of showed the trend that's going away from Stack Overflow, and more people are getting on to AI agents to get support for development, right? This would happen, but there will be alternative methods that we can use. So for instance, let's say you develop a language model on your own, and you use your own, the company's own development data sets, which are done in the past, to train the model. Right? So you might kind of fine-tune your model to your way of development based on your own source code. So if you're doing that, you're very safe, because anybody can sue you, but you can show, look, these are my source data. So likewise, there may be companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, which has a huge amount of data, or what you call coding information, not only the code, but project to patents to whatever that they have done within the company can be used as source data for training those models. And they do that right now. They don't use public data, but they use their own data. I guess Google does it as well, because there are enough of information within their company itself for such a long period, right? So what will happen is there will be agents that are trained on those models, which will be given as a service to users. So then you'll be steering away from those. But the thing is, there may be community projects, open source projects that are built. Now, they might be able to get it from GitHub and all that and work out certain framework saying, we use this and we use this to train it. One thing that they say is, as long as you kind of share the source, you might be protected to a certain distance because you kind of open up saying, look, I'm using open source code to train the model and provide the support for this. So fine line there, the open source source taken in and using for making money is a questionable thing. But as long as you kind of contribute back to the community and work your way through, I guess should be okay, I guess. It's for the lawmakers to kind of decide in that case. Yep.
Thank you. If I made my own training model, then some some LML follow my same pattern. So I already my code is a pattern in my pattern, but that system that learning model is trying that another person is asked some question, some prompt, then that time my pattern is valid or not valid.
Let me understand what you said. You're saying that you kind of developed your own language base,
yeah.
And then somebody else does a similar thing, and that person also gives a similar output. Is that right? Is that right?
I am already pattern that same code, but the another persons are asking again prompt. They are trying that follow my coding pattern.
Right. So somebody else is following your pattern that you kind of developed. Is
That's time my pattern is valid or not valid.
all right. I didn't get your question that well, but what I understand is what you're saying is you kind of develop a certain pattern, and that pattern somebody else uses a similar pattern, which can be same as yours.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So what he is mentioning is that if they have identified and brought in a strategic pattern and a source code type, and he has patented that source code. So,
Right.
and what if the AI model starts learning from other people's inputs and outputs and come across this, the patent code that they have output, and then after, like, what will happen?
Yeah. First of all, I think you can't patent source code. Right. You can. There is a certain restriction on that because nobody has patented source code. So even at Microsoft, the largest thing, it's with them. Somebody could kind of do a similar thing. The patenting, there are certain restrictions, right? So you can patent trademarks to logos to all those things. Probably the way you do it, the pattern might be questionable, but might be, right? So if somebody uses the same thing and it kind of goes against it, then there's a violation, definitely. So whatever patent somebody else uses is a violation anyway, because it's patent. That's a patent standard. But source code, I don't think it can be patented.
Sometime the system automatically follow my same.
Yeah, it can generate. So your source code would be generated. Because the thing is, if you take a standard CRUD operation, right, you tell the agent to kind of do up a data entry screen, it might generate the same thing for you as well as me if I ask the similar question, right? That can happen.
Thank you.
All right. I think we have completed almost there. So thank you very much for everyone. So I represent /Com Tech Forum as well. So at /Com Tech Forum, we are looking at techies to kind of get involved in a knowledge sharing session. So it's about knowledge sharing among the tech community. So here what we're looking at is not a specific area of technology, but in general. So I think we might be sending out flyers to promotions in the future. Try to get involved in that so that we can share knowledge better. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for that compelling session, Dhaminda. Your insights, the insights that you shared with us about the importance of ethics and accountability into AI development have been truly eye-opening. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the GDG Sri Lanka, WTM Sri Lanka and GDG Cloud Sri Lanka, the organizers of DevFest, we are very thankful for Slascom as well. So, to you and to Slascom, we have prepared a small token of appreciation as a thank you. So I'd like to invite you back over to the stage, and your token of appreciation will be presented by Mr. Dhaminda Siriwardena, GDG organizer here in Sri Lanka.